Hi, I'm Beth Stevenson. Welcome to Living Large on Little, where you learn to live well while saving time and money. Today I'm going to teach you how to can meat. You can do it if you have a hot pot or any other brand of pressure cooker, electric pressure cooker, and then I'm going to teach you a little bit at the end if you're using a traditional pressure cooker. Not very different, but the hot pot is very, very simple. Okay, there is nothing easier than canning meat. I'm going to do some chicken here and just trim off the fat and plop it into the jar. It doesn't need to be shaped in any particular way. It doesn't need to be, you don't need to chunk it, you don't need to do anything to it other than trim off the fat, because that makes it just a nicer product when you go to use it. Fit it into the jar so that it comes to this bottom rim of your mason jar. You can buy mason jars at Walmart or any grocery store. They come with the two-part lid, and then after you have used the jar and the lid, you want to reuse it, and you can buy just the flat part of the lid for $1.50 or so in the same place where you found the canning jars in the canning section of any store, any big box store. So that is all the preparation that you need to do for the meat as far as getting it fit into the jar. I'm going to make this into chicken taco filling, so I'm going to add a teaspoon of taco filling or taco seasoning to the jar so that the meat will be all nicely flavored, and then I'm going to add a little bit of water so that any gaps that formed in the meat along the jar are filled. You can see how the taco seasoning filters down once I release the air bubbles by sliding a knife along the edge of the jar. Okay, so now we have these 2-pint jars filled up with chicken with the taco sauce added. These are pork, and so they're being prepared for pork sandwiches. So I'm going to add all the flavorings that they need so that they are ready to serve. All that you will need to do is heat. I'm adding liquid smoke to the bottle so that it'll have a nice smoky flavor. I like a little bit of kick, so I'm adding a few pepper flakes to each one. Very few, just a pinch. A little bit of garlic, so that these pulled pork sandwiches will be all tasty and smoky tasting, and we'll just open them up, heat them, and they'll be ready to go. I'm going to add some better than bouillon, which is just like a soup base. It's essentially a bouillon, but I like it because it's extra flavorful. That will give it a rich, meaty flavor, and it will suffice to be the salt. You can use bouillon cubes or something, or just plain salt, and you'll still get a nice result. That's just a little touch that I like to use. Okay, the next thing is to wipe the rim of each jar. Add water to each of these like we did with the chicken. Add a little more water to that one. Okay, so now this one's a little bit too full, so I'm going to trim off a little piece. You must use a pressure cooker when you're boiling meats. You cannot do it with a steam canner. You can't do it on the stovetop with a regular pot. It has to be pressure cooked, because it needs to get up to a really high temperature that you can't get just by boiling water. The maximum heat that you can get using a regular pot, like you could do for fruits or something, is the temperature that water boils, and you want to have a more complete, you want it hotter than that. Okay, these are ready to go into the pressure canner now. Notice that the lid is not sealed, and it makes this kind of a noise. There's kind of a little raised domed area right there that will pop. Once it's been sealed, those will be tight and they won't make that sound anymore. If they still make that sound, the jar didn't seal, you need to eat it right away. Keep it in the refrigerator and eat it right away because it's not sealed. To pressure cook in an electric pressure cooker, you put the rack that comes with the pressure cooker into the bottom of the pot. You add about 24 ounces of water. So that's 3 cups. That was a little bit shy, so I'm going to add just a little bit more. And then you just put your meat, your little pints of meat, on the rack in the pressure cooker. By the way, this pork that I'm cooking is boneless pork loin roast. I got it at the grocery store when it was on sale for 99 cents for that boneless pork, and so I bought about 15 pounds of it. That's why I need to store it somewhere other than my freezer. Once these are pressure cooked and sealed, they will last in the pantry for over a year. Probably, I don't even know the life expectancy or the lifespan, shelf life of the seal on the bottles, because it lasts a long time. It can be 3 or 4 years, and it's still going to be good. As long as that seal is intact, you know that there's a vacuum inside, there's no spoilage going on. So now that I have it put in there's water in the pressure cooker. You never use an electric pressure cooker or any other kind of a pressure cooker without having a fair amount of water in the bottom of the pressure cooker. I'm going to set it for the meat setting. This particular one doesn't have, you can't set it for a certain number of minutes. You set it for whatever recipe you're using. Actually, I'm going to use the bean recipe because that's longer. And then I have the ability to raise it up to 50 minutes. So I'm going to process this for 50 minutes. It's press start and it's ready to go. I don't need to do anything with it until it has processed and cooled off, and then I will open the pressure cooker and it'll be ready to store in my pantry. Okay, now I'm going to show you a little bit about using a pressure cooker that goes on the stovetop. It has a couple more safeguards that you need to follow, safety tips that you need to follow, but it's also very, very easy. These jars have been filled exactly the same way that these other jars were done, with the meat just going in there raw, a little bit of water and to fill up any gaps that are in there, and then some taco seasoning or some liquid smoke and beef seasoning in some of them. So 2 of these are liquid smoke to make pulled pork sandwiches, and the rest of them are made for taco or burrito filling. So here's my pressure cooker. It is a Miro brand, which is my favorite one, not because the pressure cooker itself is superior, but because the gauge that goes on it is permanently calibrated. So I'm going to put my rack in the bottom of the pressure cooker, load the jars in any way that they fit. This particular size is a 12 quart, but it fits 7 quarts of 7 quart bottles. But today I'm only doing 2 pints and 4 quarts. So then I add about 2 quarts of water. Incidentally, it's tap water that you put in the jars, and it's tap water that you put in the pressure cooker. There's nothing special about it. The only thing I would say is if your water doesn't taste very good, then you might use bottled water inside your jar, because it might flavor the food unpleasantly if your water is bad, but you know that yourself. So it's got plenty of water in it, and I'm going to pop this lid down on top, and you know that it's set when it will seal and turn so that the handles line up with the bottom handles. Put my little gauge on top of here, which I've already checked to make sure that I can see daylight through this little valve when I hold it up to the light. Put it on 15, so it has a 10, a 5, and a 15 for meats. I like to use 15 because I want them to be so tender that you can just dump them out of the jar and shred them with a fork. So we'll move it over here to the heat, turn it on high, and as soon as this starts to hiss, I'll start the timing, but that'll probably take at least a half an hour before the jars and the contents of the jars and the water all are up to that temperature. Okay, just a couple hours later, this Instant Pot, or this hot pot as the case may be, has cooled down. You don't open the pot until it has cooled down to the touch. It's still hot, but it's hot enough, it's cool enough that you can open it. It prevents you from opening it before the pressure has been released. You don't want to release the pressure using that gauge or the little pressure release gauge when you're canning bottles. You can do it when the food is loose in there, but you don't want to release the pressure suddenly, because that'll cause the bottles to overflow and it won't seal. So just let it cool down after it stops processing, and you can pop it off, take the jars out. They may or may not be sealed by the time you open the lid. These are both sealed, no popping sound when you press on the lid. They're nice and tight. So these are the smoked pulled pork. You listen to the tone of the tap is much higher pitched than it was when it was where there was no seal. Behind me, this is what the stovetop pressure cooker does when it's time to start processing it or timing it. So you want to give it 50 minutes once it starts doing that little rattle. But once it starts doing the rattle, you turn the heat down to as low as you can to get it so that it'll rattle like this for a few seconds, and then it will pause, like it's doing right now. And then a few seconds later, 15 seconds is fine, it'll hiss a little bit in between. So the timer's going on this, and we're going to let it cool off after it's done processing. I just turn the heat off, leave it alone. If you're doing it at night, go to bed, it's perfectly fine just to sit and let it cool off. And it'll be ready to wash off the bottles and put in your pantry after it's had time to cool off in the canner. Thanks for watching. If you want to subscribe and share, that would be great.